Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name's Emma Goldblatt. I'm the program director of Uri Litzedek. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before I introduce our speaker, I wanted to let everyone know about some upcoming classes that we have in the next month. So next week on November 19th, we have The Holy Blasphemer in Leviticus 24 with Rabbi Topolsky. Then on December 3rd, we have The Shabbat Effect, a book talk with Alan Marinis. And on December 11th, we have Workers' Rights and Paying on Time with Rabbi Moskowitz. So we'd love to have you join us. Please sign up at the link in the chat or wherever this video is posted. But today's class is titled Fulfilling the Goals of Israel's Declaration of Independence. And we are joined again by Rabbanit Sharona Margolin Halickman. She was the first Congregational intern and Madricha Ruchanit at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale from 1997 to 2004, where she provided religious education and spiritual direction for the community. She's a graduate of Yeshiva University, a bachelor's and master's, as well as Matan's Eshkolot, Tanach, and Hilkheta programs. Sharona is the founder and director of Torat Reva Yerushalayim, and she writes a weekly blog on the Parsha for the Times of Israel. Sharona is the author of two books, Parsha Points, Torah from the Land of Israel, and Parsha Points, More Torah from the Land of Israel. So with that, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me again. Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Israel's Declaration of Independence and see where social action fits into it and see if it's really happening today, if it's happening enough in Israel, or if we still have to work on our goals. So the Declaration of Independence was written when the State of Israel was established in 1948. And, Israel was not, it was just being born. So they didn't even know what to expect, but it's pretty amazing that a lot of what's in here has come true, or what's written here definitely we see goals of what should be ideally merging the goals of a modern land, a modern state, a modern country with the religious Jewish roots that we have. So it's really a challenge up until this day of how it works. And it starts off with Eretz Yisrael Kam Ha'am HaYehudi. The nation of Israel actually woke up again in the land of Israel, which is, because people say, well, the nation of Israel was born in Egypt, right? We left Egypt as a people and became a nation, right? It wasn't in the land of Israel, but the rebirth of the Jewish people in 1948, or even right before then, is in the land of Israel. And this is really our homeland now. Israel is really the home of every Jewish person in the world, even if they haven't been to Israel. Israel's in their prayers. Israel's on their bucket list of where they want to travel to one day. Israel's where they send their kids to study or to summer camps. So Israel is definitely much more on the radar screen since it became an established state. And it was born. The Jewish people, the renewed Jewish people were born in the land, in the modern land of Israel, which is the state of Israel. And it's ruchani, it's spiritual, right? Dati, religious, and medini, and it's also a modern state. Okay, but what is it? What is it backed by? It's backed by the eternal book of books. It's interesting because when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they didn't want to make it religious because there were not religious people in the group, and they didn't want to make it, so both sides kind of like had a compromise. So instead of saying the Torah, which today I think everyone would have been fine with just saying the Torah, the Tanach, the Bible, they wrote the book of books, and everybody should know what that's about. So we're going to see there are a few hints to things that are religious but aren't mentioned, but we'll keep our eyes up. So it says in number 1, the land of Israel was the birthplace of the Jewish people. Here, their spiritual, religious, and political identity was shaped. That's definitely true, right? People come here for all kinds of spiritual reasons, religious reasons, political reasons. Here, they first attained statehood, created cultural values of national and universal significance, and gave to the world the eternal book of books, right? If you read through the Tanakh, as we saw in the last 2 sessions, you just see that everything is about Israel, and the whole Bible is based on the Jewish people being in the land of Israel. And that's why with the rebirth of the state, we can go back to so many concepts in the Bible and say, okay, we want to make these concepts work once again in the land of Israel. And a lot of these have to do with social action. So first, there's a little bit of a history here, which talks about how we were forcibly exiled from our land, okay? And but we kept our faith that we're never going to give up hope that we're going to come back. And then when we did come back, right, the anthem ended up being Hatikva, which was also new, right? We didn't have that before. That was the hope, right? And of course, in our prayers, there's always that hope and prayer for the return to Israel, the return to Jerusalem, the return to getting our court systems back, and everything else. Okay, impelled by this historic and traditional attachment, Jews strove in every successive generation to reestablish themselves in their ancient homeland. In recent decades, they returned in their masses, pioneers, mapilim, immigrants coming to Eretz Yisrael in defiance of restrictive legislation, and defenders. Okay, so what happened here is that, now it's relatively easy. We're going to see a little bit about the law of return here and how there's still some issues, right? We're definitely not saying that Israel's perfect yet, but we're working on it. But of course, before the state, it wasn't so easy to get in here. Certainly when the British were here, they didn't want to let us in. So people had to find all kinds of ways to sneak in, okay? And that's the mapilim, the people that went in, tried to get in against the law. And once they got in, right, even though they weren't even allowed in, they got in and they revived the Hebrew language. They made the deserts bloom. They built villages and towns, created a thriving community, controlling its own economy and culture, loving peace, but knowing how to defend itself, bringing the blessings of progress to all the country's inhabitants and aspiring towards independent nationhood, right? This is amazing because this was just the baby steps from before the state was established, right? They're basing themselves on whatever happened, in the early 1900s, right? That they were able to make the deserts bloom. I always find that to be very miraculous. And it was projected in the Torah, right? That we're going to be exiled because we're not going to have any rain and we're not going to be able to grow anything and we're going to have to leave. And really the land did not grow anything until we came back. And the pioneers knew what to do to get the land growing, which was amazing. The Hebrew language, it's absolutely incredible to see what's going on here today, where we're using the biblical language for modern Hebrew. Just an example, chashmal, electricity, right? There was a miraculous account in the book of Ezekiel, where God sends down this type of a light, right? This miraculous light. And they say, okay, we'll take that word, chashmal, and we'll use it for electricity, right? Just everything you see here is just amazing. And because the kids grow up with modern Hebrew, it's also much easier for them to understand the Jewish text because they already have that foundation. Today, if you look around at what's going on with the building in Jerusalem, especially, I mean, you can't go anywhere really without seeing construction, whether it's the new light rail train, whether it's new apartment buildings, whether it's tearing down old buildings and rebuilding them, whether it's building up on buildings that are shorter. It's really unbelievable. So this just keeps thriving and thriving. And already back then they knew it was going to be, and that was just really the baby steps, right? The economy, thank God, even with the war, the economy is still very good here. Let it stay that way, hopefully. And still, most people want peace. Everybody, I believe, really wants peace. Everybody has a different view of what peace is, but our view is we have the army here to keep things safe for us, and our soldiers are just unbelievable. Okay, so then of course we have Theodore Herzl coming into it, and he really, at the First Zionist Congress, he really pushed things into this rebirth, this national rebirth, which we've been trying to do really since the exiles. Okay, the Balfour Declaration said that we could already come back, so that was already a good beginning. And then, of course, the Holocaust, right? The catastrophe which recently befell the Jewish people, massacre of millions of Jews in Europe, right? That pushed ahead the idea that we were homeless, right? We were homeless. We didn't have an official place that we could go to, and we needed to have that home. And the fact that the United Nations, which we'll see is mentioned here, the fact that they acknowledged us and realized that we need a place is huge, because we don't see much cooperation with Israel from the United Nations, but there was. And this idea is that we would open the gates of our homeland wide to every Jew, right? We need a place where everybody can come. And we really learned that, unfortunately, from the Holocaust. And the survivors of the Nazi Holocaust in Europe, as well as Jews from other parts of the world, continued to migrate to Eretz Yisrael, undaunted by difficulties, restrictions, and dangers, and never ceased to assert their right to a life of dignity, freedom, and honest toil in their national homeland. So this is an interesting concept here, because you have these people that just got out of the concentration camps, and yet they came here and they fought, right? They fought in the war of 1948. They fought to build up the land. They just got right to it and built up, and that paved the way for Jews coming from so many other countries, Yemen, for example, later Ethiopia, later Russia. But in every generation, we had these massive group aliyah programs where people, were finally able to get out of their land. They just got out as soon as they could. And the land of Israel just takes everybody in. Okay, in the Second World War, the Jewish community of this country contributed its full share to the struggle of the freedom and peace-loving nations against the forces of Nazi wickedness, right? So we really, the Jews that luckily were already here did everything that they could as well. And then, of course, in 1947, the UN had the idea that we should have a Jewish state. And the General Assembly required the inhabitants of Eretz Israel to take such steps as were necessary on this part of the implementation of that resolution. The recognition of the United Nations of the right of the Jewish people to establish their state is irrevocable, which is good, because probably now they would try to take it away from us. But we have seen that, unfortunately, the United Nations has not been helpful right now during this war, and they really haven't been helpful since the state was established, aside from helping us get the state established. But we have all kinds of UN all over the place in Israel, all kinds of buildings that belong to the UN. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing here, but they're sitting on very, very expensive real estate right now. Okay, so now we see in number 10, this right is the natural right of the Jewish people to be masters of their own fate, like all other nations, in their own sovereign state. Okay, so it says here, one second. It says here, Leo kachol am ba'am, omed bereshut atzmo minina haribonit. All right, are we like all of the other nations? Okay, so we're going to see that there's an issue here, because the Jewish people, on the one hand, are a unique people. We're a separate people, right? We'll see some sources that talk about us being separate from the nations, but yet we want to run the modern state of Israel as a democratic country, just like every other nation, just like there's French people in France and Italians in Italy, Jewish people in Israel. But it's going to be different because of that religious significance that the land already has, and also the biblical and historical significance that we already have. Okay, so then it says, "Lefichach nikanasnu anu chaverim moetzat ha'am netzigei hayishuv ha'ivri v'hatnuah hatzionit v'yom siyum hamandat habriti." So this was decided that on the day that the British Mandate ended, this is going to turn right into the modern state of Israel. We're not going to even miss one day, right? It's going to go automatically, and it ends up turning out that automatic turns out to be on Shabbat, and that's why this was declared on Friday, going into Shabbat, to make sure that everybody knew where we were when Shabbat would already start. Okay, so it says, the minute the British Mandate is over, halayla, that was a Friday night, or leyom Shabbat vav Iyar, right, turning into the 6th of Iyar, 1948, that we're going to have our state established, and it's going to be called Israel. Now, believe it or not, you think Israel is like the simplest name to find, because, Israel, it's in the Torah, but actually there was a whole discussion that took a few weeks for them to decide what they wanted to call the land, and they came up with all kinds of different names, Yehuda and all kinds of names. You can just go through the Tanach, you can go through the Bible and find all kinds of beautiful names for the land. But in the end, it was decided that it would be Medina Israel, the modern state of Israel. Okay, so now we're going to look at some of the social action areas in the declaration and see if they're happening today or not. Okay, מדינת ישראל תהא פתוחה לעלייה יהודית ולקיבוץ גלויות. So the state of Israel should be open to aliyah. People should be able to move there if they're Jewish, and for the ingathering of the exiles. Okay, so we have today basically what's called the right of return, which means that if you have a Jewish parent or grandparent, you're able to make aliyah. So even if you're not considered Jewish by Jewish law, if you have a parent or grandparent, you're allowed to make aliyah. And also if you convert to Judaism and you have a certificate that shows that, then you should be able to make aliyah. But of course, nothing's as easy as it is on paper. When you apply for Aliyah, they don't just want you to say you're Jewish. They want you to prove you're Jewish, which can be a little bit complicated. If you're a member of a synagogue or community, then it's a little bit easier because then the rabbi can write the letter. If you're not, then you actually have to go to cemeteries and find gravestones of relatives to show that you had Jewish relatives. You have to try to find a marriage document, a ketubah, to show that your parents or grandparents had a Jewish wedding, right? So it's not so easy. There's a lot of paperwork involved. But the idea is that they don't want people sneaking in that don't belong. Now, in what happened with the Aliyah from Russia was that a lot of the people that made Aliyah were not Jewish according to Jewish law, and now they're kind of stuck where they feel like they're Jewish and they feel like they're Israeli, but the government and the rabbinate does not consider them Jewish. So a lot of them do conversion programs, and if the conversion programs are friendly programs that don't make it impossible to convert, then they want to do it. But once they get, really difficult and hard, then it makes it harder for the person to want to convert. And then unfortunately what happens is then you end up having more intermarriage. So we really need the rabbis to loosen up on the restrictions for the conversions, because really they don't have to be super strict. You can convert and then continue learning. You don't have to observe all 613 commandments the minute that you convert. We don't even have access to all 613 commandments. And usually they really impose on the converts to observe much more than a regular Israeli would even observe or know. So if they loosened up on that, I think it would be a little bit more friendly, especially for people that are considered Zeri Yisrael. They were already allowed to move here. So if they're allowed to move here, then we can kind of literally grandfather them in and let them have an easier type of a conversion. But if it's somebody that just says, I converted, and they're outside of Israel, the government wants to make sure that it's it's with a serious community, that they're really part of it, whatever denomination it is, but they want to make sure that it's a serious conversion. So sometimes it takes a little bit of work to do that, but it's definitely worth it because then you can move here. Okay, what else does the modern state of Israel want to do? It will foster the development of the country for the benefit of all of its inhabitants. Okay, so that's important, that it's for kol toshaveh. Everybody that lives in the land should be able to benefit from it, which means that it doesn't matter, and we'll see this further in, what religion you are, what ethnic group you are, everybody should be treated fairly. Okay, and it will be based on freedom, justice, and peace. Okay, so this sounds sort of like, the French, they also talk about freedom and all that. But what's different here is that, and most declarations of independence mention these types of ideas, but it mentions as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, right? So we have, even though a lot of these things sound like a regular democratic nation, but it talks about how it's imagined by Israel. Emma, there's a little thing on the screen. I don't know if there's a way to take that off. I'm not sure where that came from.
Let me just look. It might be because you clicked somewhere on it.
I don't know. It's like, okay. I think I got it all. Okay, great. Okay, sure. Okay, so we have this, and we'll see in a few minutes. We'll look at some of the sources from the biblical sources, right? That there's something that the prophets imagined that is still happening today. So we're not just a new, although we're such a new nation, on the other hand, we're such an old nation, right? We're only here from 1948, but yet our roots are so much deeper. So we have so much of what the prophets had to offer that comes back into us. It will ensure complete equality of social and political rights to all its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex. Okay, so this is very important that everybody is equal. Every citizen in the state of Israel is equal, right? It says l'kol ezracheha. Okay, interesting. To all of its citizens. In the English translation, they said to all those who live here, but it's really to all its inhabitants, but really it's for all of its citizens. And I think that's different in many countries, is that, obviously if you're a citizen, you can vote, and if you're not a citizen, you can't vote. So there are things that are not going to be equal if you're not a citizen, but for all the citizens, everything is the same, right? And that's how we end up having in the government, we have a lot of Arabs that are in the government. We have Arab parties in the government. We have even Arab parties that have some Jewish leaders that want to be in the Arab parties because they associate more with their rights. So we have everything. We have everything. Certainly, we've had Golda Meir, right? We're still waiting for the United States to have a female president, but we did have here a female prime minister in the 70s. So that is already up ahead. We haven't had it once since, but hopefully we will. We always have a lot of members of the parliament are female. We also haven't had a female president here. We almost did, but unfortunately she didn't win that time. But I'm hoping that we will as well. So this is definitely happening. And race, I mean, everybody here is basically a different race. I mean, like Israel is the biggest melting pot that you can find. So everybody comes from somewhere else. So, you can't really be judged on your race or where you come from. But often, as anywhere else, the newer people often get stepped on until they know their way around. So when you're an Oleh, when you first make Aliyah, it doesn't matter where you come from. They will try to get away with what they can in the regular society. And that's why we need to be here. The people that have been here for a while, I'm here 21 years, people that have been here for a while need to stand up for the new people and make sure that they know what's happening, because their Hebrew's not as good, they don't know the laws as well, and make sure that people that are new are not being taken advantage of. So this has been every type of a group. And unfortunately, everybody was an immigrant here at some point. So you would think that they go back and say, okay, we're going to be nicer to immigrants because we were immigrants. No, people forget about that, and then they just, or they think, okay, now I'm the big guy, I'm the big cheese, so I'm going to take over. No, we have to remember where we came from, and it doesn't matter, religious, not religious, whatever race, male or female. Everybody has to be treated as equals, and when they're not. Luckily, we have enough grassroots organizations and just regular people that stand up for others to make sure that it's taken care of. So even if the government is not fulfilling what they're supposed to be doing, that's when the regular person steps in. And we definitely saw in this war that we've had for the last 2 years, we've seen regular people step in for everything. Doesn't matter. Nobody relied on the government for anything. Everybody just stepped in to help wherever they could. It will guarantee freedom of religion, conscience, language, education, and culture. It will safeguard the holy places of all religions, and it will be faithful to the principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Okay, so here again, we have some issues. Freedom of religion, we have to a certain extent. We have, for example, if you're Jewish, technically you have to have an Orthodox wedding if you want to get married in the land of Israel, in the state of Israel. If you want to have a non-Orthodox wedding or a civil wedding, you can get married outside of Israel and come back and have your marriage recognized, but you can't officially have the marriage in Israel. Now they're trying to change that. We have friends that run an organization called Chupot, which literally means marriage canopies, and they do Orthodox weddings that are not connected to the state, so that the rabbinate doesn't have to be involved. And I just saw today that they said that now it's going to be recognized, that their weddings will be recognized in Israel. So a lot of these things just take time. There's also this thing in Utah. where people were able to get married on the internet during COVID. I don't know if any of you saw this. And it would be recognized anywhere. So for like 1 or 2 days, Israelis took advantage of this, and they literally got married on Zoom in Utah, and they got their marriages recognized here. But then once the government figured it out, they cut that. But anyway, so a lot of these things are slow, right? It's going to take time. And you also have an issue because when you don't allow non-Orthodox weddings, what happens is that people don't get their wedding recognized. And some people don't want their wedding recognized. So let's say somebody has a conservative or reform wedding. Then they say, well, we just did it privately. We didn't do it with the state, but we are married. Now, and then they don't change any of their benefits on their pay stub, which means that if a woman has a baby, then she becomes a single mother, even though she's married religiously, but she's not married with the state, so she actually gets more tax benefits. So the government is actually hurting themselves by doing the same thing with the Bedouin community. They're not allowed, religiously they're allowed to have more than one wife, but not according to the state of Israel. So they'll get married. They can have one wedding, so they can get married, and then they'll get divorced on paper, but they won't really divorce their first wife. And then the first wife can claim benefits on her kids from that husband, and then he'll still take on another wife, and many of them have many wives. So the government is actually, I believe, they're hurting themselves, and they're paying out a lot more tax benefits that they don't need to pay out because people are treating themselves as single moms who aren't, right? Which also, I think, in the long run could hurt the real single moms who, if the government runs out of money and decides that they're not going to do that anymore, the regular single moms will also be hurt. So I think it's better if everybody is recognized by the state, and we're moving in that direction. We have friends that got married in Toronto. They were the first gay couple to be recognized coming back into Israel and get their marriage certificate recognized. That was about 20 years ago. So we have a lot of progress, but we still have a way to go on that. And then we also have here with language. Okay, so Hebrew is the language of the state. And then, of course, the Muslim community speaks Arabic. We have a huge English-speaking population in Israel. We now have a huge French-speaking population in Israel, but the Russian population, a million Russian immigrants came in 1991. So in that area around 1991 and since. So, when you call up the cable company, they'll give you an option, for example, press 1 if you speak Hebrew, press 2 if you speak Arabic, press 3 if you speak Russian, right? Sometimes they won't even give English as an option, right? And certainly they're not giving French as an option. So a lot of people miss out if they don't catch on and learn the languages of the country. But we have a long way to go to make sure. I really think that the school should be teaching Arabic to everybody so that we would understand Arabic. One of my sons took Arabic in school, and now he can read. He can read trucks and signs and things like that. But most people don't anymore. I also think English is really crucial that everybody know it because you want to be able to communicate once you get out, and also for tourists to understand what's going on. If you come to Jerusalem, you can really get away with really speaking in English, but if you open up a bank account, everything's going to be in Hebrew. You have no idea what you just signed. People make aliyah, they sign their paperwork, they have no idea what they just agreed to. We have many cultural activities for every type of a culture. Where things get a little bit hairy, I would say, is that sometimes people don't want to respect the religious decisions of other populations. So, for example, if women want to have a women's choir or a women's concert, you'll have people that are petitioning that it's not fair. Okay. Which is really unfortunate because there are women that believe that according to Jewish law, they cannot sing in front of a man. And there are women that want to go to, girls' night out, women's night out, whatever it is. And they're happy to go to an all women's event. So by trying to tell them that they're not allowed to perform or go to these events, they're taking away from a certain group in the population. I think that there should be enough funding to be able to fund separate sex events as well as mixed events. And I think it's not fair to try to protest somebody else's choice when it comes to a social or cultural event. As well in the schools. I think, there's so much choice in schools. You can have an all-girls school, an all-boys school, mixed school, a school that's religious and secular mixed, just religious, just secular, just traditional. You really have a huge amount of choices if you're in the bigger cities. And even the Arabic population has a choice between if they want the Israeli curriculum or the Palestinian curriculum. So there's a lot of choice, and then there are some Christian schools as well. So there's really the education really offers a lot, but you have to know where you're signing up to. Not every school is great, and not every school is terrible. Okay, safeguarding the holy places of all religions. Okay, so again, this is a little bit of an issue. Certainly, we have a lot of synagogues here, a lot of churches, historical churches all over the place, and also mosques. But we have to remember that sometimes people of different religions want to go to different places, and that we should be allowed to. Like if I wanted to go to Italy, and I wanted to go to Rome, and I wanted to go to the Vatican, I can get into the Vatican if I want to go in, right? I don't get asked what religion I am and then told that I can't go in. So for the Temple Mount, for example, right now, pretty much only Muslims pray there. But then sometimes when Jews go up and they want to pray, all of a sudden the police are like on top of them, telling them they're not allowed to pray. But the question is, can you really do that? Like, there's nowhere else in the world that you could do that where you could get away with that, right? Telling somebody, oh, you're a different religion, so you can't pray here. So that's an issue that's also, we've had a lot of progress on this, and it's being loosened up a lot over the last couple of years. But it used to be literally, if you were up there on a Temple Mount and you had a water bottle and you just want to say a blessing before you took a sip of water, you could literally get arrested by the police. Or if you sat down and you put your hand on your head just because you were hot, and they thought you were praying the Shema, that you were covering your eyes, and they would take you down and arrest you. So we have a lot of work to do over there. We also have at the Western Wall, right, we have the whole controversy over if there should be, besides just a men's section and women's section, if there should be a third section for conservative and reform prayer services. And, nothing's been done with that yet. They tried to make a separate section in a different area called Robinson's Arch for the conservative and reform prayers, which is very nice for bar and bat mitzvahs, but it's very hard to get down there if somebody's in a wheelchair or any other issues with walking a lot. It's really an archaeological site, and also to prepare it, they actually ruined a little bit of the archaeology. That's another thing we always have to be careful here is with the archaeology, because it's all over the place. Like anywhere you go, you could be stepping on archaeology. And that's also with the Temple Mount. There was an issue because the Jews, weren't so involved. A lot of times they would be doing construction up there and just throw out things that could really belong to our first and second temples. So there's actually a sifting project which takes those garbage heaps that were taken off the Temple Mount, and people go through it to see if there's anything that's valuable as far as archaeology, and they found all kinds of interesting things there. It's very exciting for a kid to be up there and, with all the Coke cans and other garbage, rocks and stuff. And all of a sudden you find an old coin or an old ring or whatever it is with inscriptions. It's very, very interesting. So these goals are really good goals. I've seen in the 21 years we're here, I've seen a lot of progress on these goals, but we still have to definitely have to work on these goals. And I think it will also save the government money in the long run also by fixing these up. Okay, and then it says that we're prepared to cooperate with the United Nations, which, we definitely are. The next was we appeal to the United Nations to assist the Jewish people in the building up of the state and receive state of Israel into the comity of nations. Okay, so we were included into it. I'm not sure how happy everybody is with us right now, but we're still there. We appeal. Okay, so the next one is about the Arab inhabitants, that we want to make sure that we keep peace with them as well, and that they have full and equal citizenship. and due representation. And we definitely do have Israeli Arabs that are full citizens. Like I said, they're in the Knesset. They can vote in the elections. They work a lot in the hotel industry. If you come on trips to Israel, a lot of the staff that work in the hotels are Arabs. And one big reason is because they're very good. They're very good at hospitality, right? Not every Israeli can handle that. But also it's really a job that you have to do on the weekends. And a lot of Jewish people are going to want Shabbat off. And the Arabs are fine with working on it. Same in the hospitals. A lot of doctors and nurses, both male and female, are Arabs as well, and they also put in a lot of the shifts on the Shabbat and the Jewish holidays. Okay, and then we extend our hand to all the neighboring states, right? And of course, through the years, we've had peace with our neighbors. We haven't had peace with our neighbors. Right now, we're supposed to be at peace with Jordan and Egypt. I don't know. We've had, unfortunately, some terrorists coming out of those places, so we never know. But technically, they're supposed to be our friends as well. And then it ends with mitoch bitachon b'tzur Yisrael. Okay, so we're placing our trust in the rock of Israel. So this is another area where they didn't want to say God because the non-religious people didn't want to include God, but the religious people wanted to. So instead, they called it Rock of Israel, right? We say in our prayers every day, we say Tzur Yisrael, right before the Amidah prayer. So this is a word that we know, and of course, in the modern prayer for the state of Israel, Avinu Shabbat right? We say Tzur Yisrael B'Goalo, right? So that came into that prayer as well. Of the prayer for the state. So Rock of Israel can be used as a term for God, but it doesn't scare off people that don't want the word God, which is funny because other countries have no problem saying, right? You see in America on the dollar bill, it'll say, "In God we trust," right? In Israel, oh no, we don't want to include God. Same with like a job like a chaplain in a hospital, right? In America, you go to hospital, you have every kind of chaplain, every religion has a chaplain, or the chaplain there will deal with every religion, right? In Israel, you tell them about a chaplain, it's called Livui Ruchanit, spiritual leader. No, we can't have anything religious. So it's interesting how sometimes they're afraid of the religious things, and then on the other hand, they want religious things. Like you'll have, everybody wants to have, a full Shiva. Somebody passes away in Israel, they sit for 7 days, they sit Shiva. In America, a lot of communities don't sit Shiva for that long. Even the Reform movement doesn't require the full seven days of staying at home. But in Israel, like that is very traditional. Everybody does it, and also the workplaces give off, the whole time. So in some ways, we're very, very traditional, and then in other ways, it's we don't want anything to do with the religion. So this was the compromise they call God, Rock of Israel. We fix our signatures. Okay, and then of course we have some famous people here. I'll just go through a few of the famous people. David Ben Gurion, right, who obviously everybody knows him. And Golda Meir was on here, right? She used to be called Meyerson. Golda Meyerson, right? That's Golda Meir. We have some rabbis, we have some doctors, we have a mix of everybody. We have Moshe Shapira, who actually is the great grandfather of Einer Shapira, who was one of the heroes of October 7th, who was in the Migunit. He was in that protective area when the terrorists came by and they started throwing in grenades, and he was one of the heroes that threw the grenades out of the Migunit. 7 times he threw the grenades out to try to get the terrorists instead of them getting the people in the Migunit, but unfortunately he was killed by the 8th one. Okay, so let's look back now on some commentaries on this. Okay, so one is Chaim Guri. Okay, so Chaim Guri is a famous Israeli poet, novelist, journalist, and documentary film maker. When I was in college, I studied Hebrew literature. We studied a lot of his works. He was part of the Tanach, and he fought against the British Mandate. And he went to Hungary in 1947 to help the survivors immigrate. So he says about the paragraph about the state of Israel, about the Holocaust and the state of Israel. He says the state of Israel was not created because of the Holocaust, rather it was created despite the worst tragedy in our history. Right? A lot of people say, "Oh, we only need the state of Israel because of the Holocaust. No, he said it was created despite the worst tragedy of history. We still were able to get a state together, and he lived through this, so he understood that nuance, which I think is very important. It also had mentioned the She'erit HaPlita, right? The last people that were left in Europe, they're called She'erit HaPlita. They were the fugitives, right, that left Israel. My mother used to call them refugees, right? But we see that actually there's a fugitive already in the book of Breshit. It says, a fugitive brought the news to Avram, the Hebrew, who was dwelling at Elonei Mamre. The Amorite kinsmen of Eshkol and Aner, these being Avram's allies. Okay, so already we see that there were fugitives at that time. So this is not a new thing, right? That you're in a war and you get out and you escape and then you bring word back. We see this a few times in the Tanach, and every survivor is a miracle. And the fact that we still have Holocaust survivors in Israel today is just amazing. It's just, I had a student in one of the senior residences that I teach at who was 90 something years old, and we were studying about Sarah, giving birth, at 90, and she's, what? It was like unbelievable. We talked about Esther, not admitting that she came from, that she was Jewish. That in the Megillah she does not say that she's Jewish, and I had a few women that are Holocaust survivors in my classes that said that in no uncertain terms, when they were liberated from the concentration camps, when they were liberated from Europe, and the American army came in and they said, are you Jewish? We want to help you. They were so afraid to say they were Jewish because for so many years they couldn't say that they were Jewish. So just meeting these Holocaust survivors is amazing, and that thank God, there are a lot that are still alive. In the prayers also, we talk about, we say, Shomer Yisrael, Shmor She'erit Yisrael, guardian of Israel, protect the remnant of Israel, right? These people were literally the remnant that came, they went all over the world. There were a huge Holocaust survivor population in Riverdale when we were there. There's a huge population. My husband's from Montreal, as well as in Israel. Some of you may have been in a community with a lot of survivors, but it's an amazing experience to get to know these people that really, out of nothing, they built up a whole new world. Okay, so we have a commandment called V'ahavtem et hager ki gerim hayitem b'eretz Mitzrayim. You have to befriend the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Israel. And this is why it's very important that we understand that it doesn't matter what race, religion, whatever it is that people come from. We have to be nice to everybody, right? We have to treat everybody with respect. Okay, then we get to the part that says Kechol right? And like I said earlier, that the state of Israel was established like all of the other nations. And I said, well, is it really like all the other nations, right? We're different, right? So it says in Devarim, Ki am kadosh atah Hashem Elokecha, b'cha bachar Hashem Elokecha liot lo la'am skula mikol hamim asher al pnei ha'adama. For you are a people consecrated by your God. Of all the peoples on earth, your God chose you to be God's treasured people, right? Am Skula is God's unique people, right? It's a group that just belongs to God. Asher al pnei adama lo marubchem mikol hamim chashat Hashem bachem vayivchar bachem ki atem hama'at mikol hamim, right? We're a minority, right? It's not because you are the most numerous of peoples, right? The amount that the Jews make it into the news is crazy compared to the amount of Jewish people there are in the world, right? You're not the most numerous, right? That God attached you and chose you. Indeed, you are the smallest of peoples, right? But it was because God favored you and kept the oath made to your fathers that freed you with a mighty hand and rescued you from the house of bondage, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that only your God, right, Hashem is your God, the steadfast God who keeps the divine covenant faithfully to the 1,000th generation of those who love God and keep the divine commandments, right? So we're called an Am Skula. We're a unique nation. We're not like all the other nations. We're different, right? No other nation could have left their land for so long and come back and just, get right back into everything. We're also told in the book of Malachim, Kings, V'gamet hanochri asher lo ma'amcha Yisrael hu uva me'eretz rechoka leman shmecha, right? If a foreigner who is not of your people Israel comes from a distant land for the sake of your name, right? For they shall hear about your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm, and thus comes to pray towards this house. Here in your heavenly abode, and grant all the foreigner asks you for. Thus all the peoples of the earth will know your name and revere you, as does your people Israel, and they will recognize that your name is attached to the house that I have built. Okay, and this is so true today, right? This is when King Solomon built the temple, the idea was that everybody is welcome, right? And all the religions are welcome. And the holiday of Sukkot that we celebrate is really the idea that all 70 nations should come to Israel and be able to pray here. And you see when tourism is good, right? Hopefully now that the war is officially over, we'll have more tourists coming back. But there's so many Christian tourists that line up to go up to the Temple Mount. There's a huge amount of Christian tourists that want to go up there. The Kotel, when you go to the Western Wall, every country's represented on I try to go once a week, pray for people from all over the world who need our prayers. And whenever I see somebody that looks like they're foreign, I say, where are you from? And they say, oh, we're from Peru, we're from Africa, whatever it is. It's just such a joy to be able to see that these prophecies are coming true, that people want to come and they're welcome. And then it continues, for they are your very own people that you freed from Egypt, from the midst of the iron furnace. May your eyes be open to the supplication of your servant and the supplication of your people Israel, and may you heed them whenever they call upon you. For you, our sovereign God, have set them apart for yourself from all the peoples of the earth as your very own, as you promised through Moshe, your servant, when you freed the ancestors from Egypt, right? So yes, we are our own people and we are a special people, but that doesn't mean that we're going to treat others differently because of that. In actually the opposite, right? Because we are representatives of God, we're literally like God's emissaries. We have to do more to make sure that everybody feels welcome here. Okay, so this idea of hacherut hatzedek v'shalom, right? That there's freedom, there's justice, and there's peace. Like what's written in the books of the prophets, we see this in the book of Yeshayahu. Halo paros lerav lachmecha v'aniim merudim tavi ba'it ki tir'eh arom v'chisuto u'mevasarcha lo titalem. Right? It is to share your bread with the hungry and to take a wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to ignore your own kin, right? So this is the idea that we have to follow. These are the words of the prophets. This is the words of Isaiah, right? Help feed the hungry, right? Help the poor, right? Help those that need clothing, right? Do not ignore them, right? And this is important. The only way that we can get rid of poverty is if we help conquer it. And that's why it's amazing how many nonprofit organizations we have in Israel doing all of these things, whether it's getting from the land, fruits and vegetables that aren't going to be picked and picking them and packaging them and sending them on, or even cooking them before sending them on to those who need it, or soup kitchens that look like a restaurant and inviting people to just come in and eat, or deliveries from supermarkets to the poor neighborhoods where you can just kind of like leave potatoes and carrots and stuff outside, and whoever needs knows that they can come and get it. All of these things are just initiatives that people are coming up with, or giving out credit cards that look like credit cards that they're really like food stamps, and people can go into a store with dignity, right? All these things are done by people that had all these initiatives. Says in Zechariah, another prophecy, so what do you have to do? Speak the truth to one another, render true and perfect justice in your gates. Now we know in Israel, just like the rest of the world, politicians always have controversies. It doesn't matter where you go, right? I remember there was a time that Rav Shmuley was talking about, if we should even be saying the prayer for the government in America anymore, right? And I actually wrote a piece saying, we need to pray for the government of all the different countries that we live in, because they're the ones that need the help, right? What does the prayer for the government say? Help them out, right? We need help. And I'll tell you, for 2 years, the entire time that we had this war, since October 7th, every day I said the prayer for the government, for the soldiers, and for the hostages, 3 separate prayers, which usually are just done on Shabbat. I said, they need us. The government needs, they need a lot of insight. The soldiers certainly do. And of course, the hostages, thank God they're back. And I don't have to say that for anymore, but we need, right? We need our governments. They need insight, and they need to speak truth. And what happens in Israel, which should happen everywhere, is that if somebody did something wrong, we've had a president that ended up in jail, we've had a prime minister that have ended up in jail. If they really deserve justice, then justice will be served on them, and there's nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. It's good to admit that our leaders are corrupt sometimes to make sure that the next ones won't be. Another one from Micha, Hamor Beit Yaakov, Hakitzar Ruach Hashem im Ela Ma'alav Halo Dvar Yitivu im Hayashar Holech. Right, the house of Yaakov, condemned. Is God's patience short? Has such been the practice? To be sure, my words are friendly to those who talk in rectitude. And then we have in Yeshayahu, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shavea b'tzedakah. Zion will be saved in judgment, her repentant ones in retribution. So we see that there's this whole thing of justice. This is very important here. And in Yeshayahu, Lama li rov zivchevchem. God said, what do I need all your sacrifices for? Right? He says, I am sated with burnt offerings of rams and all that stuff, right? If you're a vegetarian, you don't want me to read the rest here. Okay, but whatever. Basically, what it means is I don't need your sacrifices. And today, because we don't have sacrifices, I don't need your prayers. Don't pray. Just do tshuva. Do the right thing. Be nice to other people. Be nice to God. You don't have to apologize. Just don't do it. Lamdu hetev, Yeshayahu says, Dershu mishpat ashru chamotz, shivtu yatom rivu almana. Right? Learn to do good. Devote yourselves to justice. Aid the wronged. Uphold the rights of the orphan. Defend the cause of the widow. And we have all of this going on here today in the modern state of Israel. We have people that are fighting for different rights, right? We have people out there all the time making sure that if somebody is wronged, right? Certainly agunot, women whose husband disappeared and now they're stuck because they're still married to the first husband and they want to marry somebody else, right? We have to uphold justice. We have to make sure that these husbands are caught and that they give the Jewish divorce so that these people can get on. We have activists in all of these areas, making sure that these people are taken care of. It says in Malachi, Halo av echad l'chulanu, halo el echad baranu, madoa nivgad ish be'achav l'chalel brit avotenu, right? We all have one Father. God created all of us, right? Why do we break faith with one another, profaning the covenant of our ancestors, right? Why don't we treat each other better, right? Sarak sorim v'chavrei ganavim, kulo have shochad rodef shamonim yatom lo yishpot v'riv amana lo yavolem. Right, your rulers are rogues and cronies of thieves. Right? This is like you can take this right out of the Israeli paper Yediot Achronot today. Right, everyone avid for presents and greedy for gifts. They do not judge the case of the orphan, and the widow's cause never reaches them. Right, where are they? They're wasting money on getting bribes instead of helping out the poor, and that's why we have so many advocates making sure that justice is done correctly. Amos shimu hadavar hazeh parot habashan asher bahar shamron haoshkot dalim harotzesot evyonim haumrot ladamnehem habia v'nishta. So he actually Amos calls the people cows of the Bashan. Right now, if you know anybody in England, they call women cows if they don't like them. Right, not a very nice idea. I don't know if they got it from here. But they're basically saying they defraud the poor, they rob the needy. Okay, so these are not people to look up to. And the last one, Hagid lecha adam ma tov u'ma Hashem doresh mimcha ki masot mishpat v'avat chesed v'tznei alechet im elokecha. What does God really want? To do justice, love goodness, and to walk modestly with your God, right? We have to be there, right? We have to try to uphold the Declaration of Independence. We can't just say, okay, the document is here, we're relying on the government, we're relying on the court system. No, we have to take an active role. We see something's wrong, we have to fix it. We see that the soldiers aren't getting enough anything, the soldiers on duty aren't getting enough food, or the soldiers in the hospital aren't getting enough gifts or treatments or whatever it is. We have to step up, because if we don't step up, it's not going to be done. And that's why it's really beautiful to see so many Israeli organizations stepping up to help out where they find that things are lacking. And also, we need good people to go into politics, but of course, everybody's afraid to do that. So I want to thank all of you for joining today. Remember the words that I have here, and this could be copied to whatever country you're living in. Step up, as Rav Shmuley does all the time, but not just him, everybody, step up and do your part, right? What's missing? Who needs help? And just step up, because together as a community, we can really build things up and really get down to what is in these declarations of independence for each country.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Rabbanit Sharona. It was great to have
Thanks.
you again. If anyone enjoyed this class, you can find our other classes with Rabbanit Sharona on our website or YouTube or our podcast. And thank you everyone for joining, and have a great day.
Take care. Thanks for
Thank
coming.
you.
Bye-bye.